There's a saying, I wish that I knew that I was in the good old days while they were still happening. In 49ers terms, especially when we talk about their defense, the good old days are pictured right here. Taken in 2022, the 49ers linebacker unit, spearheaded by Fred Warner at the mic, Dre Greenlaw, the weak side linebacker position, and Azeez Al-Shaair, who's now a Mike linebacker himself in Houston. He was the 49ers' third linebacker, the strong side guy, the Sam, in base defense. Since this 22 season, the 49ers linebacker unit has eroded for obvious reasons. Azeez Al-Shaair and Dre Greenlaw both left, but now there's a bit of a reversal happening, and it's really, really interesting to see the 49ers building that linebacker room back up. Dre Greenlaw is obviously back, and more breaking news today. 49ers have made their first signing of Friday, and that first signing is Luke Gifford. Now, Luke Gifford is not somebody the 49ers are projecting to be a big player as far as defense goes, but he is a Pro Bowler on special teams, and he is part of what is now a 9-player linebacker room. San Francisco has absolutely loaded up there, I think by necessity, because, yes, the Dre Greenlaw 2.0 experiment for the 49ers is one that they can't put all of their eggs in one basket for. They absolutely have to take into account the fact that Dre has not played a full snap load, not even close over the past 2 seasons. So a lot of linebackers out to compete, and maybe there'll even be some trade movement at some point for the 49ers to assuage some of the surplus. But the 49ers right now are in this fascinating spot where they're rebuilding the room on many different fronts, including the special teams front with Luke Gifford and a deal that is worth about $5.5 million over 2 years. Tom Pelissero first reported the news. Gifford had been with the 49ers for the first time this past season, and he was a very, very key piece to improving the special teams unit from number 32, dead last in the league in 2024, to number 2 in 2025. So don't lose sight of the fact that the 49ers went worst to nearly first in special teams, and Luke Gifford earned a Pro Bowl nod for his efforts there. 19 tackles on coverage units led the way for the 49ers. So they're pushing chips in to this season. And, maybe I should zoom out to what I'm talking about here this morning a lot on Twitter. I think a lot of people saw Mike Evans' comment yesterday where Mike said that he feels that he's the missing piece for the 49ers. He said, I think they're one piece away. And I've even seen some local media people say Mike Evans is delusional. I think if you don't believe Mike Evans, you might be the delusional one. Like, how quickly people forget what the 49ers, when they were relatively healthy, did to the Seattle Seahawks in the season opener last year. They won the game 17-13, but the only reason that it was that close was because Jake Moody missed 2 kicks. They statistically dismantled the eventual champion Seattle Seahawks in week 1. And I think if people don't acknowledge this, then they will not understand the 49ers' big 2-year plan that we're seeing right now. Last year was the roster reset. They weren't very aggressive in outside free agency. Instead, they reinforced what they already had, and it set the table for this season. This season is where the 49ers are adding to what they already had via an aggressive approach in free agency. And there was only one game, really, where they were mostly healthy in 2025. So there was only one game where it was possible to gauge how that 2025 roster reset went. And it was this week 1 game against the Seattle Seahawks. And what you see up on the screen right now, I think, is exemplary from the 49ers. They outgained them 384 to 230. Yeah, I don't even have the possession on here. They outpossessed the Seahawks by 16 minutes. They held the football for over a quarter more than the eventual world champions, who were so dominant in the postseason. So many people are hung up on the fact that the Seahawks dominated the 49ers late in the season, but that was the JV squad. The 49ers are operating under the reality, and I've been trying to tell you guys this for weeks, maybe even months, that Fred Warner is returning. Nick Bosa is going to be returning Brock Purdy should play more of this season. A lot of guys who missed time, key players, will be back in 2026. And that is why the 49ers believe that the roster reset in 2025 was successful, because they won 13 games with the roster that they had in spite of the injuries. And now it's time to push the chips in, since you have more outside spending capability, and really, really make sure that you take this to the next level. And one way that you make sure that this goes to the next level is that you protect the gains that you already made in 2025. One of the big gains that the 49ers made in 2025 was the surge from dead last to number 32 in special team, from dead last, number 32, to number 2 in special teams. And a contract worth $5 million and change over 2 years for Luke Gifford is a substantial pay raise for him. We'll see the exact terms of the contract. I'm sure that the 49ers will be able to keep the salary cap hit low. Update on that front: Eddie Pinheiro, a deal worth $4.25 million annually. His salary cap hit for this season is under $2 million. 49ers are being, again, very aggressive with how they're prorating these things into the future. I'm sure most of you have already seen my Trent Williams video from this morning, where I talk about the need to get that contract done. I think a lot of what the 49ers are planning, not just in this season, but in future seasons, from a salary cap perspective, is very contingent on spreading the Trent Williams damage out into the future, where the 49ers can take advantage of that salary cap inflation and not be saddled with a $39 million cap hit this year. Well, what they did for Eddie Pinheiro, they want to do on a larger scale for Trent Williams' contract. I think that they probably applied to Luke Gifford's contract. You can see the picture of Luke Gifford, one of their top special teams players, on the screen. But let's zoom out to the linebacker position, where the 49ers have 9 of those guys under contract. And we could talk about the good old days. We can talk about the 49ers bid to get back to this. I think one thing about the Dre Greenlaw signing, and obviously the benefits of it are very, very contingent on health. But if the 49ers are able to see Dre Greenlaw play most of the season at the level that we know that Dre Greenlaw can deliver at, it's a benefit that could have cascading effects, because Dre Greenlaw would play the Mike linebacker position. Fred Warner's at the Mike linebacker position. Dre Greenlaw would be at the weak side linebacker position. And that will position was relatively problematic last year. It required the 49ers ultimately, like Eric Kendricks had to come in off the street to play the Mike for the 49ers. But initially they thought he was going to play the will, because they weren't getting great play at any of the spots by the time that this had hit its low point. So you could have, theoretically, D. Winters, if he's still on the team next season, move from the will, the second linebacker spot, to the Sam, and all of a sudden your third linebacker spot has been upgraded over what it was in the past. So in an ideal world, I think Warner, Greenlaw, Winters are your starting 3 linebackers. Is it Warner, Greenlaw, Alshire? No. But I think that it is a room that starts to look a whole lot more like a strength for San Francisco than the weakness it was last year when they had to bring in Eric Kendricks off the street. And he did a great job. And Garrett Wallow did a solid job for the 49ers too. But it obviously wasn't an ideal situation for the 49ers at linebacker, and that's why they're trying to get back to the good old days this offseason. So the 9 on the team right now: Warner, Greenlaw, Winters, Bethune, who finished last season hurt, Gifford just re-signed, Garrett Wallow re-signed earlier this week. And then, this is the one that a lot of people asked me about, Nick Martin. Big-time red flags to end last season. He was still in the concussion protocol when last season ended, and we haven't gotten an update on him officially through the 49ers here since the season ended. But he entered concussion protocol in early December, was in there all the way through mid-January at the very least. That's some scary stuff if you can't get out of concussion protocol. And I don't think until we have heard for certain that Nick Martin has cleared that protocol and that it is in the rearview mirror, I don't think that we can sit here and count on Nick Martin delivering for the 49ers into the future. And I think he was a player that was on an appropriate trajectory for San Francisco last year. I mean, he was the Sam linebacker at the time of his concussion, and he wasn't playing at all. in the weeks before it. It happened against the Cleveland Browns in that game that the 49ers won, helped right the ship of their season. I think he's extremely athletic. I think he's somebody the 49ers actually envisioned being a Dre Greenlaw type, just with the athleticism he can bring in coverage. And they think he's strong and he could play violent football, but concussions are nothing to scoff at. And I think Martin is going to have to prove that he's going to be available for the 49ers before they can count on him. In much, of a mirrored way, Dre Greenlaw is also going to have to prove that the 49ers can count on him. He's only played 34 and 323 snaps, respectively, over the course of the past 2 seasons. So 49ers would, obviously, in a dream world, he is closer to the player who he was right before that Achilles tear, the best player on the field in the Super Bowl, than he has been after. But I will also say that Greenlaw, when he was available for the Broncos last year, played 10 games, actually played really good football, was one of the better run-defending linebackers in all of football. And you can always use that. You can always use Dre's attitude, his swagger. It just is a matter of health is wealth. And the 49ers, recognizing that they need to have some insurance, have absolutely loaded up on numbers in the linebacker room. I think that Gifford and Wallow are both special teams guys. Now, you'll notice on this 53-man projection right now that I have a full 7 linebackers on the 53-man projection. They're not going to carry 7 by the time that this season starts. And Jalen Graham and Milo Eifler are over here, but they're not going to have 7 on the 53. Something's going to have to move here. Maybe Wallow doesn't make the team because they see enough with Luke Gifford, but I think they're going to Wallow was good on special teams, and I think the 49ers enjoyed having him around, so they're going to have to make some decisions there. Maybe only one of Winters or Bethune makes the team. Now, the really interesting thing about Tatum Bethune is that he is a good mic linebacker as far as being able to hear the play calls, radio in his helmet, and execute the communication after hearing it from the defensive coordinator. I will share, though, that the 49ers are changing defensive coordinators. So I think Bethune fit well with Robert Saleh. We'll see who fits well with Raheem Morris for San Francisco. But certainly decisions to be made coming up for the 49ers in that logjam of a linebacker room. I just love the old picture here of these 3 guys. It's hard to believe how strong the 49ers were at this position in 2022, but this was also the number 1 defense in the entire NFL. And it was hard to realize how good they were. I mean, I knew they were good at linebacker, but until you saw what these guys became elsewhere, I mean, Dre Greenlaw was paid to become the Mike linebacker, the number 1 linebacker for Denver. Unfortunately, another injury derailed his time there. But Azeez Al-Shaair has turned into a star in Houston, and he was the 3rd linebacker. Again, Greenlaw was the best player on the field over the first quarter of Super Bowl 58. He was flying around, and Fred Warner is maybe the best player in football. I mean, I get that it's hard to argue with different positions doing different things, but Fred Warner is one of a kind. He is a future Hall of Famer. And the cool thing is the 49ers now have 2 of these guys back on their team at a position as important as linebacker. They also added Nate Hobbs yesterday, and I do wonder, we talk about the back 7 of this defense. Where's Hobbs going to fit in? I would hope, if you're the 49ers, that you're planning to have him play closer to the line of scrimmage, play some of that slot. Maybe find a big slot arrangement with him and Upton Stout. Maybe get both of them on the field at the same time. Maybe you're going to be running some DB-heavy packages. Maybe, just maybe, is going to be a matchup safety. One of those safety corner hybrids. The 49ers have been doing some of that, and I think Jason Pinnock, who just signed with the New York Giants today, was somebody who was a placeholder in that type of role for Robert Saleh, but now we're going to see what Raheem Morris wants to do. It becomes easier for all of these guys in the secondary on the back end when the linebackers are good, when the linebackers can cover, when the linebackers can plug the run. I mean, it's amazing how intertwined all of this is. And that's why, somebody will be like, well, what was wrong with Nate Hobbs in Green Bay last year? Well, aside from the injuries that hampered him all season, I also think that he wasn't playing in the right spot. I think he was mainly at outside cornerback. His most successful seasons with the Las Vegas Raiders were inside, and the Packers, for whatever reason, decided, well, we're going to pay him more money and move him to the outside, and it didn't work out, but it just kind of shows you how situation-dependent success in the NFL is. So the 49ers have identified the athleticism that they love with Nate Hobbs. They've identified his ability to play across the formation, but I think that they've also identified that he's better on the inside, and maybe that could complement the linebacker position. He's not playing linebacker, but just like Upton Stout wasn't playing linebacker last year, he complemented that position really, really well because he was in there near ground zero, near that line of scrimmage. He was making run stops. He was blitzing effectively. He was using his very small but strong frame to kind of sneak through, beat blocks there on the inside. And who knows, maybe Nate Hobbs is going to be in a similar role for the 49ers next year. So Gifford added, if you look at the 49ers 90-man roster right now, that is 69 spots out of 90 taken. Here's a look at all the 49ers free agents. To give you an idea, I could zoom out a little bit. I've listed every single free agent right here. I've classified them as unrestricted free agents, restricted free agents, or exclusive rights free agents. And then right here, I have started color coding results. So anytime somebody re-signs, it is color coded. If he re-signs with the 49ers, it is color-coded in green. If he re-signs with another team, it's color-coded in this reddish color. You can tell that roughly half of the 49ers, about 30 free agents, have now signed new contracts. And I think that that's about in line with the average across the entire league of free agents. So I think that it is fair, safe to say that we are about halfway through free agency. And that means that it's Friday right now. We started all of this on Monday with the legal tampering window. The new league year hit on Wednesday. Stuff started to become official on Wednesday. The 49ers made the trade for Osa Odighizuwa, which was obviously a really, really big pickup for them. And now we're sitting here on day 3 of the new league year, day 5 of the whole grind of free agency week. I think once the first 50% of players are off the board, you can definitely say that first wave of free agency is over. Then you move into the second wave. The good news for the 49ers and the good news for their fans is that I don't think that they ever went through an overpaying mode this year. The 49ers have been in value mode throughout the entire week of free agency, even with their headlining addition, Mike Evans. I mean, they were able to get him at a deal that was at its base cheaper than the Cooper Kupp contract with the Seattle Seahawks. And they continue adding at what I would perceive to be value rates. I mean, Nate Hobbs yesterday, that's going to be a deal up to $4.5 million. He was playing for $12 million last year for the Green Bay Packers. So you're getting him at a clearance rate. You know, his stock is as low as it's going to be. I think, coming off the 3 injuries that sidelined him for a lot of last season, I think that you could very, very easily see an ascent from Nate Hobbs as a 49er this year. Brett Toth, the offensive lineman of the Eagles, somebody didn't cost the 49ers a lot of money. I can't wait to see the Dre Greenlaw final contract numbers because I think he and Evans are both going to have a lot of not likely to be earned incentives, which protect the 49ers. You can protect yourselves a couple ways against the cap, and that is through not likely to be earned incentives. Players like Mike Evans and Greenlaw were perfect candidates for those types of deals since they didn't play a lot last year, and incentives are based on the prior year's contract production. You could protect yourself through salary cap insurance. The 49ers did not take out a policy on Fred Warner. That's unfortunate. So they're not going to get anybody back there, but they did take out an insurance policy on Nick Bosa's contract, and that's going to lead to about $7 million of salary cap relief this season. The carryover for San Francisco, also something that I've already factored into the calculation. So right now they're playing this game where value at every corner is needed because they have been very aggressive spending wise, but thankfully for the 49ers, thankfully for their fans, they've been pushing value at every single juncture at every single one of these signings. My calculations right now, and I went through this, and, I'm sure you have to go watch the video from this morning. on Trent Williams. Why? Well, because it explained the salary cap strategy for the 49ers, and it's the first time anybody has said it out loud. It explained that Trent Williams is the hinge point for San Francisco's financial outlook moving forward. I mean, this is the salary cap sheet right now. My calculations, even with all the adjustments, have them under $8 million. Now, I know that we've got some estimates on here, and Eddie Pinheiro's cap hit came in, I think, even lower than I thought it would come in. I thought maybe $2.5 million. They're able to stretch this out a lot. You got to give credit to the 49ers salary cap people for that at $1.95 million. But they're still running low on space. They still are going to need to execute some of these restructures. And the best, most efficient restructure they can possibly execute, something that's more than just a formality like Nick Bosa's would be, a conversion of signing bonus to proration, is Trent Williams. There's a reason why the national media that is connected to the 49ers front office, so I could talk about Adam Schefter, has repeatedly said that the $39 million number, right here, you could see it, $38.8 million for Trent Williams in 2026 is considered unfeasible. And that is because it actually is unfeasible. They carried over a lot more. They carried over $20 million from 2025 to 2026. They've got to carry over money from 2026 to 2027. They carried over $50 million from 2024 to 2025. So I think that you can see what the 49ers plan and the 49ers cost structure works like. There has to be room left over at the end of every season for San Francisco to continue surfing this salary cap wave. So they need to lower Trent Williams' salary cap hit, and the only way that you can do that significantly is through an extension. Even cutting him or trading him would not lower it by that much. It would only lower it by about $4 to $5 million. They need a good $15 million taken off of this Trent Williams salary cap hit to get this number to a more reasonable spot. And then we can also talk about adding other players as they make this big push toward a title in 2026. All of it is predicated on the energy and the belief coming out of 2025 that this team is in the right place to make a run right now. And I don't think that it took a rocket scientist to figure that out coming out of 2025. They went 13-4. They won a road playoff game despite missing a massive portion of their roster. Again, I go back to the one data point that we have of the 49ers close to healthy in 2025. It's tremendously sad that there only was one data point, but the data point does exist. It was a week 1 win over the Seattle Seahawks where they statistically dominated Seattle. It was verification that the offseason roster reset that was so unpopular with the fans. I get it for the fans. They don't like to see guys leave, but the media didn't really by and large, didn't do a good job of covering the roster reset. I mean, this game, though, verified that the roster reset was on the right track. The 49ers can hang their hats on this result of a mostly healthy football team when they are looking to fill in the holes, the remaining holes of the 2025 squad to get ready to make a big run in 2026. You know, Mike Evans, when he says, I feel like I was the one missing piece, I'm here now. Guess who the 49ers didn't have in this game outside of kicker? And I know they re-signed their kicker, and we went through Eddie Pinheiro's contract. So obviously, Jake Moody was a point of weakness for the 49ers in this game. They would have won by more had Eddie Pinheiro already been around. But guess who the 49ers also didn't have in this game? And they had a mostly healthy roster outside of him. Brandon Ayuk. They didn't have an ex-receiver. They went into Seattle against what turned out to be a historically good defense. And they outgained the Seahawks by more than 150 yards. They ran 22 more plays. They possessed the ball for 16 more minutes than Seattle without an ex-receiver. So there's your answer as to why Mike Evans thinks that he is the one missing piece that the 49ers need. He is the ex-receiver. I mean, the one thing that the 49ers definitely weren't able to do against the Seahawks in week 1 when everybody was wringing their hands about the 49ers receiving depth, right? It just was an issue entering that game because of no Ayuk and other injuries for San Francisco. Juwan Jennings was coming coming off of the weird training camp, hold whatever it was situation. He also was hurt during training camp. I mean, it just wasn't a good spot that the 49ers were in week one at receiver, but the very related problem tied to that was they couldn't run explosively. So the Seahawks totally bottled up the 49ers run game. What Mike Evans does for San Francisco is opens up rushing lanes downfield just by his mere presence at the X receiver spot, something that they were missing in that week one game against the Seahawks that they still dominated statistically. I'll keep on putting this up there. I'll keep on putting it up on X. Everyone seems to constantly come back to this really lazy, intellectually incorrect talking point of, oh, the 49ers got blown out by Seattle in the division round. Who cares if their JV team got blown out by the Seahawks? That is not the team that the 49ers are going to run out in 2026. And it's also not the team that they're going to build around in this 2026 offseason. You're not going to build around and consider all your roster strategy and fill in around a team of practice squad guys at some very, very important spots. That's who the 49ers round out there against the Seahawks. What you're going to do is you're going to look at what your team projects to be when it's healthy again, since Nick Bosa and Fred Warner are coming back and other guys are going to be back that weren't available. You want to take a look at your healthy team from 2025, and you want to see, okay, where are the weaknesses there? That's the strategy for the 49ers. So they're looking at the team that did this to the Seahawks, and they're adding to the spots of weakness from that game. I wish the sample size was larger too, just because I love analyzing this stuff, right? Just from a neutral perspective, I wish that the 49ers sample size of a mostly healthy team was bigger than that one game against the Seahawks. But unfortunately, that's where Purdy got hurt. That's where George Kittle got hurt. And it was all downhill from there, injury-wise, for San Francisco. They had a little blip of health later on, but by then, no Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner, right? So I too wish that we had a larger sample to work off of. We don't, but at least we have this, because it allows us to make intelligent inferences about what the 49ers might look like moving forward. And for some reason, I'm talking about this for weeks, right? And now it's finally catching on because Mike Evans is saying the same things. So I'm really happy that Mike Evans is now with the 49ers, since it appears to be somebody that can also deliver logical thought. But for whatever reason, it was controversial to say that Nick Bosa and Fred Warner are going to be major acquisitions in effect for the 49ers in 2026. Should have never been controversial. They're better than anybody the 49ers could have added in free agency. Even Mike Evans, even Osa Odighizuwa over trade. But when you look at Osa and when you look at Mike, those are two positions that even when the 49ers were at their mostly healthy self in 2026 or 2025, those are two positions that the 49ers could still hit the upgrade button on. I think that it's absolutely staggering that San Francisco is in a spot where they have added two A-list pillars that get the yellow highlight over the course of this offseason. And, I got a comment on X today, and I'm going to act on that comment because I think that this is long overdue, and I wanted to save it for when I had a live audience. I think Kyle Juszczyk should be a foundational pillar. And I feel bad that I have not highlighted Kyle Juszczyk's name as a foundational pillar of this football team yet, despite running this roster for several seasons. The guy is so immensely important to everything that the 49ers do. He has been here throughout the entire Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch tenure, which means he's been here as long as I've been covering the team, since 2017. He is underrated by those who don't understand what they're watching. But for those who do know that they're watching, Juszczyk should be paid as a tight end, not as a fullback, based on all that he is asked to do on the field. Anyway, Purdy is a foundational pillar, a load-bearing wall. McCaffrey obviously is. Mike Evans gives the 49ers one in the receiving room. George Kittle, very clearly. Trent Williams, they're working on the contract with him. You could use another one at center, but unfortunately, that's just the way that it shakes out for the 49ers right now. Nick Bosa has long been a load-bearing wall. They just added another one, a defensive tackle, and Osa Odigizua. There's Fred Warner, and there's Diamara Lenore. You're short maybe at safety. We'll see how that progresses for the 49ers. But where you really, really need to add one, and we're going to have the ceremonial adding of this, it is way overdue, way too late, and that is my fault. I should have had Kyle Juszczyk as a load-bearing wall. Well, he is now going to become one. There it is. Round of applause for Kyle Juszczyk, one of the 49ers' foundational pillars. So, I mean, technically, since we hadn't given him the credit that he deserves until now, technically the 49ers have added 3 foundational A-list pillars this offseason. But I think he already was one before. They now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 foundational pillars, like A-list foundational pillars on this football team. That is way more than any other team in football. Like, to qualify for that, you have to be playing at a high level, and you have to make sense in the context of the roster that the team is really reliant on you in a huge, huge way. You're a force multiplying kind of player. And every single one of these guys that is highlighted as a force multiplier, they all deserve the title that they have. And, you know, there's so much misguided kind of commentary about the 49ers where people say, oh, well, the team is getting too old. You want experience. You want guys who know how to win in the NFL at your load-bearing spots. Where you want the youth and the speed and the energy is at the positions that fill in the roster. And the 49ers have plenty of chances to get younger, to get faster, to get healthier at those other spots, but you need winners in those key load-bearing areas. And the 49ers, I think, have definitely been able to stock up on those this offseason in an almost miraculous way. You think that they got Mike Evans. That was great. They got him at a price that really works, which I think is more important than anything. It's really tied to the price of Trent Williams. They got to find a number that works there. They then traded for Osa Odigizua, obviously at a price that works. One that, the third-round pick, I get it, but the $16.75 million salary this year, one that could, by the way, be prorated into the future. They could also restructure Osa's contract moving forward to help create some of that salary cap wave. It has been remarkable to see the amount of talent that the 49ers have added for cost-efficient prices at the upper ends of their roster this offseason. You know, James Gladstone, the Jacksonville GM who comes from the Rams school of thought, spoke at length the other day. I want you guys to listen to James Gladstone because this is going to tie directly into 49ers strategy, and it's really going to underscore how good of a job John Lynch has been doing over the course of this decade, because exactly what Gladstone talks about is what the 49ers have done such a good job of in general building their team over the past 10 years.
Talk team building philosophy briefly. I mean, kind of quiet through free agency. There's been that frenzy, and Jaguars fans not necessarily used to it. So maybe a little bit of frantic waiting for you to do something there.
Man, quite a bit different than, a year ago today, right? We came out the gates, what you might call as hot, signing double-digit free agents, external free agents right off the bat a year ago. And the whole approach to that cycle was raise the floor of the football team, and that was a part of it. We're at a stage now where, a higher volume of draft capital is what we're hunting up, and those compensatory picks. When you think about high-priced free agents of ours ended up signing elsewhere, well-deserved contracts. I mean, a lot of guys that have already announced his signing, I mean, they did their part to put themselves in really sound positions to earn that, and excited for all those guys. In return, by not signing any outside free agents, we recoup 2027 draft capital. And I think on its surface, you would think, oh, okay, you're going to make picks in 2027. Whereas in reality, those draft picks and having more of them actually allows you the luxury of remaining in the hunt at different intervals throughout the entire calendar year for acquiring players. You think about training camp a year ago and using a day 3 pick to acquire a wide receiver in Tim Patrick. You think about ahead of the trade deadline and being able to use 2 picks on day 3 to acquire a wide receiver in Jacoby Myers. Without that draft capital at your disposal, you may not be as willing or able to relinquish some of those future picks. So by building that up now, it allows us the luxury of remaining sort of with the flexibility to do those sorts of things as we move into the next stages of the offseason and into the regular season.
So last year, James Gladstone so perfectly illustrated the Jags were doing it, but the 49ers were too. So he really, I think, really helped people understand why the 49ers were banking so heavily on the NFL draft for rebuilding their defensive line. That's exactly what the Rams had done. They didn't want to sign free agents to take away the spot of a rookie because the 49ers saw great developmental opportunities for Micah Williams, Alfred Collins, and CJ West. Here, Gladstone is talking about the big picture cycle, and I get the Jags are at a different spot of their cycle than the 49ers. They have restrained the free agency spending this offseason. They're trying to collect some of these draft assets. That's what the 49ers were doing last offseason. And then you could, after you turn around and collect the draft assets, then you are more armed for spending on trades over the entire 365-day calendar year. 49ers made 4 of those trades over the calendar year last year. What you see is irrational fan anxiety because fans want action during media rush windows. Fans see free agency and they want action in the first 3 days of free agency. Fans see the trade deadline and they want action in the 3 hours before the trade deadline. When, even if we count the trade deadline as an entire day and we take free agency as 5 days, like the first wave, right? That's just 6 total days out of 365 days in the year where you can make transactions, right? And fans seem really, really obsessed with making transactions in those specific windows, even though an acquisition that you make outside of those windows is just as valuable and might even be better because you're not overpaying during a time where the hype has overheated the market. So it's about asset management. And right now we're seeing the 49ers spend some of their assets after they were spending the 2025 offseason hoarding some assets. You go through different cycles because different things make sense for your football team. You're always reflecting where you are from an asset standpoint, and you're comparing it to where you are on the field from a football standpoint. I talked about it on KMBR this morning. Football standpoint, the 2024 49ers weren't good. It's a team that had aged out. They tried to run it back. It didn't work. Everybody got hurt. The team fell off a cliff. They couldn't stop the run. That's the foundation of anything a football team has to do is stop the run. So they said, okay, we got to scrap the defensive line. We have to focus on run defense. We need to rebuild this from the very foundation. And it's going to take a couple years because we got to focus on run defenders first. Then we'll go to the pass rushers after we run our salary cap reset in year 2. They tied what was wrong on the football field with their longer-term financial situation, which required them saving some money because they needed to pay Brock Purdy and they needed to repay George Kittle and repay Fred Warner. They needed to double down on the load-bearing walls, the A-list pillars that you see here highlighted in yellow, and they needed to infuse the roster with youth around those load-bearing walls to fix some of the big football problems like the run defense, which is based on hunger, which is based on youth, which is based on desire out on that football field. They successfully did that in 2025, and now they not only are filling in by spending in free agency outside the load-bearing walls. You could see some of those additions highlighted in teal. Vidarian Lowe, Brett Toth along the offensive line, Greenlaw, obviously, Nate Hobbs brought in last night. Not only, though, the 49ers focused on outside the load-bearing walls, they are adding load-bearing walls themselves. They have added new foundational pillars to reinforce this team. And that's where the real value has come in. Mike Evans and Osa Digizua via that trade. So hopefully James Gladstone, for the second time in 2 years, has helped everybody understand how the 49ers are operating as a football team. Wow. Former Packers left tackle Rasheed Walker reached agreement with the Carolina Panthers but only for 1 year. Maybe Rashid is waiting for Trent Williams to retire so he could join the 49ers on a longer term deal. Like, Rashid is not a bad offensive lineman. Green Bay seems to be a very good factory of offensive linemen. The fact that I think the Green Bay probably hoped Rasheed Walker would sign somewhere for a longer deal and a bigger deal so that it would better help them in the compensatory formula. 1 year with the Panthers, yeah, I mean, it might be worth quite a bit of money. We'll see. Carolina trying to load up right now, but I'm surprised that it was just a 1 year kind of prove it situation for Rasheed Walker. We'll see again, see how much money it is. That was maybe one of the 49ers leverage points with Trent Williams. I guess Taylor Decker is still out there after the Lions cut him. But, it's hard to find a leverage point over Trent Williams because it's Trent Williams. At some point, you just got to get the deal done. I always laugh when people say, well, the 49ers should have had a backup plan. It's like, who was your backup plan for Trent Williams? I mean, if Jalen Moore is costing $15 million a year, that's what Kansas City paid him. How the hell did you expect to keep him on the roster? And even if he was on the roster, do you think that you would have leverage over Trent Williams? I don't really think so. I don't think that Jalen Moore holds a candle to what Trent Williams is able to do, even at an advanced age. So that whole situation, unless the 49ers want to suffer a significant regression at left tackle, they are in a bind right now to where they have to find a way to get this contract done, both in both arenas, the football arena, right? Because you've got to maintain the protection at that important position, left tackle, and the financial arena, where you have to appropriately thread the needle of short-term cap space and long-term financial flexibility. And that's how you can perpetuate the good old days. Those of you who've been watching the whole show, you get a full circle finish. Maybe the 49ers linebacker position is headed back to something like this. Thanks for watching. Almost got 1,000 of you in here. It's all good. Got to head out to lunch. We will talk to you very, very soon.